It's all about the Macro Productions.
What does the goddamn line say, Tony?
Please do not use gendered language.
Then what? I'll be arrested, put in airport jail?
Look, you're going completely sideways, man.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
How dare you?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
I'm Chris Hansen with Dave on NBC.
Jack Marius Tack Theratrix.
Hi, I'm Spartacus.
Jackson, Sacramento, he, him.
Steven Seagal.
Sex offender guy.
I'm Keith Morris.
This is Muammar Gaddafi.
I'm Rick James, bitch.
Sorting through the lies.
The hijacker's passport was found blocks from the World Trade Center crash site, if you can believe that.
We cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
And uncovering the centuries-long plan for world domination.
Learning about Cuba, having some food.
Let's talk about Chinese people.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? Swangles in Fort Lauderdale?
I have sent 6 of my Libyan missiles to blow up the Sears hardware department.
Nothing could be more fun than jumping off a cliff with 2 German bisexuals.
Oh, you English are so superior, aren't you?
Thank you, comrade.
And now, Macroaggressions.
That's what assholes call it.
With your host,
Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you're about to get chlamydia.
Charlie Robinson.
Hey, Whitey, where's your hat?
You want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
He was a retard.
I get some goddamn diuretic.
Welcome to Macroaggressions. I'm your host, Charlie Robinson. If you're watching us on Rockfin or Rumble, or you are listening wherever podcasts are served, thanks a million. We appreciate the support. We couldn't do it without you. If you want to connect with me, the website, macroaggressions.io, is the best place to do that. If you want to follow me on Twitter, @macroaggressions. And I would politely request, if you haven't rated the show yet and you think we do a good job over here, we'll take 5 stars if you've got it. We're fighting this algorithm battle like everybody else. Our sponsors make this show happen. We appreciate them so much. Legal Shield has been doing this for 50 years. They've been providing their customers access to a high-powered attorney in their area for a very reasonable price, $30 a month. We'll get you in the door. You can knock out all kinds of documents. Do you have your last will and testament? You've got to have that. You have to have that. You cannot get yourself in a situation where you die without a will and then the state gets involved and your family has to deal with it. It's too much, right? But you don't want to spend a couple grand to go have that drawn up, or your medical directive, or your financial power of attorney. You don't want to get stuck in a hospital bed without the documentation that says what you want done to you in the event that you're incapacitated as well, right? So we have got to think about these things. I know nobody wants to think about it, but we've got to be proactive. So if you want to knock this stuff out and not spend thousands of dollars, then you could sign up for Legal Shield, and in the first month at $30, you could just knock it all out, right? They'll give you an app on your phone. It's super easy. You just push a couple buttons and tell them what sort of documents you're looking for, and an attorney in your area will contact you in the next 24 hours. It's really that easy. So I would encourage you to go to the website that they built specifically for this show, don'tgetpushedaround.com. That's the place to go to find out more about Legal Shield. And also Chemical Free Body. My God, I feel like a broken record here, but they make products that work. They make vitamin supplements that do what they're supposed to do. Their Green 85 drink is fantastic. You should incorporate that into your daily routine. I do. It takes you 5 minutes. And I mean, it's a glass of water, green powder, stir it up, drink it, and you're done. And it will put you on the right path to, I don't know, reclaim your health. There's nothing worse than feeling bad. And if you're feeling like you want to take control of it, then it's up to you. Tim James saved his life by changing his diet. He can help you too. So if you're interested, chemicalfreebody.com is the place to go to find information about their products. And when you're on your way out, the discount code is MACRO. That'll save you some money. So I'm still reporting to you from Las Vegas. So we'll do this. Those of you watching, you'll see my elaborate teapot collection behind. No, I'm just kidding. That's my mom's. But I'm still here. I'll be here for a while. So We're on the road. We're in the Las Vegas office, as it was, right? It got me thinking, though. I've been all over the place recently, like mentally, of course. But I've been watching. Obviously, as we get to an election season, you start to hear candidates, Kamala, Donald. I think we're on a first name basis with these two lunatics by now. They start proposing things, right? They start talking about what they're going to do. I mean. Trump talks about what he's going to do. Kamala talks about what she's going to do for 4 years is spread joy, right? That's the extent, and communism, right? It reminds me of Benny Wills and the guys over at Joy Camp, right? They had from Orwell, right? Their comedy troupe was called Joy Camp. It reminds me of Kamala. Kamala is creating Joy Camp for everybody. Like, it's just joyful communism, don't you know? We're just out here sharing the fruits of our lack of labor with everybody as we starve to death in bread lines, right? So it gets you thinking. It gets you thinking about, like, well, what would happen if Comrade Kamala became the president of the United States? Now, first of all, it sounds funny to say. I mean, let's be honest. Kamala Harris, president of the United States, does not flow off the tongue, right? But it's possible. Not because she's a good candidate, not because people like her, not because there's authentic and actual support. I don't mean she could become the president because she's popular and her ideas are really great. I crystal clear, do not mean that. I mean, she could become the president because they will install her as the president to oversee 4 more years of whatever this is that we're going through. But you get a taste every now and then of some of the ideas that these people put forward. And universal basic income has been an idea that has been floated around for decades. And it is such a bad idea, but it is disguised as altruism. It's disguised as a handout, as a you're in a bind. We're going to give you some free money to kind of help you with the basics because we're a loving and compassionate country that you live in, or this government loves you, and we're going to give you free money to make sure that you don't get left behind, right? That's the sales pitch. It's always a sales pitch. It never changes. It doesn't need to change. They're giving you free money. They tell you we're giving you free money because we're good guys and we're helping you out. That's the extent of the pitch you need, right? Just say thank you and take the money, right? Well, until you dig into it, until you find out what universal basic income actually does, and find out that it is a time bomb that is lit on society. And the people that take advantage of universal basic income desperately need it, right? But mice can't understand why the cheese is free. That's why they get caught in the mousetrap. You understand? So when they're giving you free cheese from the government, when they're giving you government free cheese, there's a catch. There's always a catch. The government isn't your friend. It's certainly not your parents, right? If you have this relationship where you mistakenly believe that the government is there to help you, and that the government is kind of like your family, and that they're going to make sure that you don't get left. Oh, you're low on rent this month. We'll help you. Mom will send you some money for groceries. You know, mom she's a softie. She'll always give you a couple extra bucks for groceries. Or here, take this money, go out and go to a movie and everything. That's the government, right? That's what you believe the government is with universal basic income. No, it's not that. It's most definitely not that. And I'll tell you what, in terms of what it does to people psychologically, it's extremely damaging. You know, you may think it's a handout, and it will be framed as a handout, but it's a catastrophe that when you depend on it over a long period of time will destroy your community. There's plenty of examples of it. It's done by design. And we're going to get into that. I'll wrap up sort of the second half of this with one of the studies that they did. They did a 3-year study on universal basic income, and they did it in a couple of different states. And the results of that are alarming. So, but let's start with what universal basic income is and kind of go from there. It's a public governmental program for periodic payment delivered to all citizens of a given population without a means test or work requirement. You don't have to work to get this. This isn't unemployment insurance. This isn't, we have to give you a aptitude test. You have to be looking for it. There's no there's no stipulations with it, at least officially, right? It's just, you don't need to prove that you're unemployed, and you don't need to prove that you need it. You're just going to get it if you want to take it, right? It's unconditional income sufficient to meet a person's basic needs. Sounds good, right? The government is going to give you a little bit of help so that you can meet your basic needs. Now, if you were somebody that was a very hardworking person, very determined and driven and motivated, and you were down on your luck a little bit, like you were on the right path, but you were running at you're running each month at maybe a little bit of a loss, but you were definitely were going in the right, and you needed a little government help, a little universal basic income to kickstart your stuff, make sure that you don't wind up homeless as you're getting through the last couple semesters of college, or you're getting through, you're at this shit job, but you're taking a test to be able to take on a more job, whatever. If this is a temporary stopgap measure in order to keep you afloat so that you can then go on to greater things in the future, I would feel differently about this. But what you find is that psychologically, it stunts everybody's growth. It doesn't motivate them. It does something else to them. So there's no problem with the government, theoretically, there's no problem with the government giving out unconditional income sufficient to meet a person's basic need, except the unconditional part is a problem. It always gets exploited. That's the thing. You see, you can give this out, this universal basic income out to a bunch of people that are desperately in need of it, that will never be able to thank you enough for helping them. And those people will benefit from this because it came at the right time. But then there's going to be other people that really don't need this, that never needed it, or they find loopholes and they exploit it, or they put dead relatives on it, or whatever. There's always a way. If a government is putting together a program that's giving out free money, there's going to be cracks in it, in the foundation. There's going to be flaws. There's going to be loopholes everywhere. Somebody's going to figure it out. People are going to exploit it. They always do. Even when someone's giving you free money, they're still going to say it's not enough. I want to figure out how to steal the rest of it, right? So the unconditional part of this is a problem. Now, if the government I'm in the United States, and we're talking about a universal basic income with regard to the United States, but it's not limited, of course. This happens at all, this conversation is happening in all Western countries. It probably should be happening on some level in every country. But the unconditional part is where you want to say, well, listen, we're fine giving you money, universal basic income and everything, but there has to be a couple things. First of all, there has to be an ending date. This can't go on forever. And second of all, there has to be something in exchange for it, or else this money has no value. You can't give away free programs to people. If you had let's say you had something that was like a $10,000 ticket to get in to go see the best motivational speaker in the world. If you gave those tickets away for free to people on the streets, they wouldn't show up. They wouldn't go. You have to assign a dollar value for it to actually matter. When you start giving people free money, it winds up having the opposite effect of changing the way they view money. It's not just the surface level. There's a psychological component to it that you better bet your ass has been run through Tavistock and all of these think tanks that say, if we do X, then Y will happen, and if we add this much money, then we can get this sort of result. If we add too much money, then we get no result. If we want to control people and keep them down on the reservation and shopping at the company store, we can give them this universal basic income, and then we can make it contingent on maybe you're only allowed to spend it in certain places. Maybe you're only allowed to spend it with our partners at the World Economic Forum. Something along those lines. So the unconditional part will change, I think, over time. I think they will put conditions on it. The conditions that I would put on it are probably going to be much different than the conditions that they would put on it. My conditions would be like, show me that you're actually trying, and you can get this money for a limited amount of time. If you're not doing anything, if you're just sitting on your ass, I'd make it contingent on something. But, unemployment benefits are not universal basic income. So I want to make sure that we differentiate between that, because unemployment benefits are actually insurance. You pay into that with your paycheck every 2 weeks. That goes to an insurance policy that you're basically buying a part of on yourself, so that if you lose your job, and there's certain restrictions and criteria for how that looks, you can't just quit it, you have to get fired. But if you lose your job, you can claim unemployment benefits. That's not government giving you free money, just so that we're clear on what unemployment benefits are. You've paid that money. You're getting your money back in that. So if you wind up on unemployment, don't let somebody try to shame you for that if you are somebody that was actually working and got fired and started collecting unemployment, because it's your money. It's your insurance policy. You're just collecting on it. And if anybody's got a problem with that, they just don't know how it works. So don't worry about that too much. But the universal basic income is a different thing. That's welfare. That's EBT cards. That's essentially what it is. So, Social Security benefits, we can talk about those as well. This is, it's not the same. Okay, just so that we're clear. Social Security benefits and unemployment benefits are benefits that the individual has paid into over the course of their working career. They're entitled to those. Those are the entitlements. Those are when they say government entitlements and things like that. That's what they're talking. They're talking about Social Security as a government entitlement. It's a huge Ponzi scheme that needs new, fresh money to make sure that the original people get paid out as they go to collect on it. It is the definition of a Ponzi scheme. And it is going to end as every Ponzi scheme ends too, right? So those of us in my generation, Gen X, and the people younger than me, I feel like I shouldn't have to even say this, but I'll say it just so that I know I said it. But please do not hang your hopes on collecting Social Security when you turn 65 or 70. It will not be there for us. It's not going to be there for us. It's going to be managed. They're going to do what George Carlin said. They're coming for your Social Security, folks. They're going to get it. They want to give it to their criminal friends on Wall Street, and they'll get it because they get everything because they run this place, right? So Social Security will go that way as well. We know that. And look, should our society look out for the vulnerable and the old and the weak and the sick? Absolutely. Sort of an indictment on your society when you throw those people out that need you the most. I'm not talking about helping billionaires with tax breaks. I'm talking about helping somebody who is born with cerebral palsy, right? You need to make sure that person has what they need to navigate life as easily as possible. They were dealt a very unfortunate hand through no fault of their own. Take care of those people. If you don't do that, you're a shitty society. Right. So I am in favor of benefits for the people that need them through no fault of their own. It gets into this gray area when you start to see people who really don't need them, that are choosing laziness over working. And that's not gonna work. I don't know. I don't trust the average American to be able to figure out this UBI scam. I don't expect them to, because it comes to you in a way that looks like charity, but you just can't see the chains that are tied to it until it's too late. So so universal basic income is kind of the blending of two or three different things. It's government bad ideas with economics, which they ignore all the time, and psychology. Right. So there's a couple things at play here. Government are always going to have bad ideas. And if it comes to let's see if we can buy votes for from our constituents by giving them free stuff, that's a trick that's been used for thousands of years. So you've got that on the one hand, and you've got the psychology side of things, which is what happens when you get free money and you don't have to do anything for it. What sort of value do you have on that money? It's video games and weed. I'll tell you what it gets spent on. It gets spent on all the shit that it shouldn't be spent on, right? I mean, if you were thinking like, oh, I really need a hand here, maybe, it's not gonna, you're not gonna feel all warm and fuzzy as to where it gets spent, right? So, and part of that has to do with just the other side. It's just economics, right? There's nothing personal about this. It's just the math behind economics. And when you inflate the money supply, when the money printer goes burr and you start to create more money out of thin air, you get inflation. That's irrelevant and completely detached from anybody's opinion on it and some politicians' ideas that they're going to magically be unaffected by the math behind this. This is what always happens. So you've got these, John Maynard Keynes was an economist. He said, more money in people's pockets will lead to stronger economic growth. So when you hear Keynesian economics, they're talking about this guy, John Maynard Keynes. Keynesian economics is helicopter money. That's Ben Bernanke's helicopter money thesis, right? It's, let's just, not actually, but in a figurative sense, go up in a helicopter filled with bags of cash and just drop it on the people. And you go, oh, I'd love to be underneath that helicopter when they drop all that money. Yeah, you would, of course, to collect it. But here's the problem, is that each unit of currency that you print into existence waters down every other unit of currency that was already in existence. So the more you print, the less value everybody has. This is inflation. You do this long enough and you get to a point where you get into like a feedback loop, where you get to inflation, a little bit too much money printing, the inflation gets too high, and then it spirals out of control. And that becomes hyperinflation. And then you get wheelbarrows filled with Deutschmarks. So this is a very slippery slope. And these economists are held out as being gurus. Paul Krugman of the world. Paul Krugman, by the way, is 5'2". Did you know that? You're not allowed to lecture anybody about anything as an economist. If you're going to come out here and lecture me about this, and 5'2", he's and I probably wouldn't have a problem with him being 5'2" if he wasn't so wrong about everything as well, right? And these were the people that get amplified voices during events like COVID. To come out there and say, well, actually, we think that we're going to do this. We're going to print $5 trillion into existence. And everyone goes, that sounds like a crazy idea. And they say, no. I mean, look, here's the models from Keynes. It says that when you do this, it will lead to, when more money in people's pockets will lead to stronger economic growth. No, more money in people's pockets will mean that you have to pay more money for every item because more people have more money in their pocket. I mean, everything gets revalued proportionate to the amount of money that's out there. So if there's a shitload of money, if all of a sudden everybody has $1 million, you know how much it's going to cost you to go to the movie? $14,000, right? I'll give you $14,000 for that. So this is again, it's just math. But God forbid you have a politician try to explain this to you. They'll take the math part out of it and they'll take the psychology component out of it, but we won't. What happened during COVID? What happened? $1,400 checks in 2020 and 2021. This created inflation, which completely nullified any sort of perceived benefit that this money was supposed to bring you. You know, it's like, hey, we brought you a bunch of money. It's like, yeah, well, you brought everybody a bunch of money. So now everything costs way more, exactly proportionate to the amount of money that. Now, if you had just brought just me, a bunch of money, that'd be a different story. Right? Because then I could take advantage of all these today's prices. But if you give everybody $1 million, then we have to pay tomorrow's prices, which is everything's skewed. There's only 2 checks, right? $1,400, and let's be honest. So if someone gave you $2,800 right now, are you going to quit your job? People did during COVID. They got paid to not work. They got paid to stay home and not spread their diseased germs all over the place. They were incentivized to not work, which is crazy. But if you incentivize people to do nothing, they will do nothing to the best of their abilities. I assure you that. So the bailouts during COVID are not universal basic income. And the reason why they don't qualify as universal basic income is because they are not consistent. They were one-time, one-off payments. Well, they did more than one, but you know what I mean? One this year and then one the next year. And I think some other people got some payments for some, who knows? But it wasn't set on a schedule to pay monthly. It wasn't one of those. So, what it was the crumbs of the trillions of dollars that were printed for COVID business payoffs. They paid those people off to lock it all up. So here's the question. Does universal basic income provide economic growth? That is a good question. The Keynesians think that it does. But the cost is a further dilution of the supply of dollars and the value. So I disagree with their philosophies on how money printing benefits society. I think you have to have enough money so that everyone has sort of access to it. The flow is there. The velocity of money is such that there's enough of it flowing through the system so that you're not facing shortages. But you most definitely do not need to be printing $5 trillion during Operation Warp Speed. You can't do that. You can't do that under the best of circumstances. And you certainly can't do that all at once. If you wanted to print $1 trillion a year every year for 5 years, I'd still have a huge problem with that, but it would be a lot better in terms of digestion than just $5 trillion all at once. So I'll tell you what did happen during 2020 and 2021 when those checks started flowing in. People started buying Bitcoin with it. If you noticed, the younger demographic was taking a chunk and putting some away. That's when you saw crypto really take off in that summer of the tail end of the summer of 2021. Those checks came in and people said, I don't want really, like, it seems like a bad idea. There's, people that understand Bitcoin understand fixed supply, and they understand that when the money printer goes burr, problems occur, and that you want to get yourself in a safer harbor. I know calling Bitcoin safe is kind of funny because it's so volatile, but it's safe in the sense that there's a fixed supply of it, as opposed to dollars, which you clearly can see that they just went and printed 5 trillion more out of thin air because somebody caught a cold. And somebody in China fell face first in a video and started throwing up blood all over the place, and the world locked down. So we printed 5 trillion. So if someone could just go to Bitcoin headquarters and print 5 trillion more Bitcoin, then you would want to be as far away from that as possible. That's the point, is that they can't do that. They can't do it. Nobody can do it. So if you're looking for scarcity, digital scarcity, and some people were during this time, in a time when they go, this is a recipe for hyperinflation, it just is. Well, get yourself into some sort of safe harbor. There's more dollars. So when you print $5 trillion, just the logic behind it is that there are more dollars out there chasing, theoretically, the same number of goods and services. So now, in order to get those goods and services with all these extra dollars that are there, they can charge more dollars, and you can afford to give more dollars because you really need those goods and services, and they're sort of limited. And now the money supply is much bigger than it used to be. So now it's going to take more money to buy those goods and services. Again, this is where I say it's not personal. It's just math. And in asking Kamala Harris to understand math, I realize is a challenge. But what happens is that when you flood the market with $5 trillion, then the prices go up because of inflation, and then it gets normalized. That's the biggest problem, is that the prices don't go down. They just don't go down. If they go down ever, they don't go down fast enough. So the prices go up and then they stay there, and then that gets normalized. And then it's always been $12 to get a Big Mac in the minds of the consumers. So it's done with an understanding of how it will be received by the general public and what the repercussions of this will be. Now, let me ask you this. Do you know where our tax money actually goes? $6.1 trillion was spent in 2023 by the United States government. I'll show you how it got allocated. Now, the truth of the matter is, it's like, theoretically, most of it needs to go towards paying down the debt, which they'll never do. There's no plan to pay down the debt. But if they were serious, I mean, if you were running like a home business, or you were running your own personal finances and you had as much debt as you had, you would need to allocate as much of your resources to paying that down if you wanted to get a handle on it. The United States pays about 10% of that 6.1 trillion that they bring in to pay down the debt. So it's not enough, but this is where the money goes. Okay, 24%. Let's round it. We'll just say a quarter of it, right? A quarter of the money that comes in, a quarter of that 6.1 trillion goes to Medicare, Medicaid, and CHIP. CHIP is like a food subsidy for working families. Medicare and Medicaid, this is obviously medical related for people that qualify for it due to age. I will tell you this, my experience with what I've been going through with my mother dealing with Medicare, Medicaid, and this stuff. I would be lying if I didn't say it was pretty nice that so far she hasn't had to pay for any of the procedures that she's had, the times in the doctors, the biopsies and the bypasses and things like that, the actual surgeries and the hospital stays and things like that. It's been $0. Okay. So that is nice. It's $0 for her. But again, over the course of her lifetime, been paying for taxes and insurance and Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. So this money goes into it, right? But the United States government pays about a quarter to help out, it's over $1 trillion. It's $1.5 trillion goes towards this. Now, how much of that gets squandered and by the healthcare industry? Who knows? I'm sure a ton of it. But that's where it goes. Now, 22% Social Security. So you've got two basic Ponzi schemes here. Social Security being an outright Ponzi scheme and Medicare and Medicaid being some sort of weird hybrid where you've been paying in for this medical care your entire life and then maybe you use it and get your medical care later in life. But I'll be honest, if the government, if you give them sodium pentothal and got some truth out of them, they would say that it would probably be their preference that the top 10% oldest people in the United States just up and die, right? Because that's where all the money goes. Social Security, Medicaid. I mean, that's 50% right there. It's 46%. Half of 6.1 trillion basically goes to the Social Security Ponzi scheme and the Medicare and Medicaid, whatever that is, government healthcare, right? Defense spending. They have it listed here at 13%. 13% of 6.1 trillion is, close, 800 billion or so. I think it's probably more than that. Whatever. That's just the numbers that they quote. Safety net programs, 8%. Federal and veteran benefits, 7%. So when you add this up, Medicare, Social Security, defense spending, safety net programs, veteran benefits, and interest on the debt, just those six things, you have already spent 84% of all the tax revenue that's coming in. Good luck. Now you have to run the country on 16% of the money. Because you've already, these are the entitlements that they talk about. Oh, you can't do anything about these entitlements. We have all these entitlements. Blah, 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 blah. Well, okay. So of that 16% that's remaining, where do we spend the money? I could make some cuts right here on this first one. 5% for education. 5%. So that means you're spending $300 billion on education in the United States. And this is what we got. $300 billion, almost $1 billion a day on American education. And this is what we get, that we're lowering all the standards. We've got people aren't taking the SATs anymore because it's culturally biased and written by white devils, of course. And we're lowering the requirements to get into college. We're lowering grades. We're lowering what it means to get an A, B, C, or D. Now it's like, a B is anything above like a 65%. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Wish I were in school and I'd have been a straight A student with this criteria. I mean, it's embarrassing and kind of an indictment and sort of almost like a perfect encapsulation of America to just see money going out, just blowing it on stupid programs and getting nothing in return. Congratulations. So 5% of our budget goes to education. 2% goes to transportation and infrastructure. Really? 2% goes to transportation? I mean, that to me sounds like $120 billion if I'm doing the math in my head. And so what? Did you fix the rail system? No. Did you fix the ports? No. Did you fix the roads? No. What about the power lines? Well, we didn't get that. How about the bridges? We didn't work on those. What about any of the rivers? Did you clear out the riverways? Most of the cargo in America comes out through rivers and whatnot. Have we fixed that? No, we haven't fixed that. No, Pete Buttigieg has been busy, when he's not going on maternity leave every other week. He's, an infrastructure arsonist, making sure that, all of the infrastructure is, faulty, dilapidated, and in need of repair. When trains aren't falling off the tracks and spilling chemicals. Airplanes are flying into food processing plants and blowing up. Right. That is when Boeing jets aren't falling out of the sky, losing their wheels, or having in-flight doors blow off of them. Congratulations. $120 billion a year you're spending on this? You know what I would do? Here's my policy. I'd say, you're going to start with zero. And you show me where you need money, and I'll put you on a payment system. I'll give you $1 million at a time, and we'll see you spend until you show me how you're spending this thing properly. Because if Pete Buttigieg is in charge of $120,000 million, I have a huge problem with that. His days is working for McKinsey in Afghanistan, plotting how much of the minerals they were going to steal from that country. Fuck that guy. He's been terrible. Sorry, just had to kind of vent on him a little bit. So, 1% of the American budget that's collected goes to science research, law enforcement, agriculture, international. So here's the math on this. This is the money that was spent. $6.1 trillion. That's the money that was spent. That isn't necessarily the money that was brought in taxes. That's just the amount of money that they've decided that's their budget and that's what they're going to spend. So 6.1 is what they spent. In actuality, what came in as tax revenue was 4.4 trillion. So you're already at a difference of 1.7 trillion every year just based on revenue coming in, expenses going out. You run this in your daily budget, right? Your household budget. If I make this much and I spend more, if I spend 40% more than what I make, how long can I run that before they take my house, my car, and everything out? Like how long before I wind up in bankruptcy? Well, if you're the American government, you can do it forever because you have a magic printing press. Well, the Federal Reserve private central bank does. And they'll loan you money at interest, and you can just put it on your Amex with them and just run up a tab forever. So, but you and I don't have that luxury. We have to say, we have, in this case, 6.1 trillion. Let's just say you had 61,000 coming in and 4.4 trillion going out, and you had $44,000 coming in and you had $61,000 going out every year. That's what you were making, 44, and you were spending 61. How long would you last? How maxed out would your credit cards be? Pretty bad, right? That's where America is. They needed 138% of the revenue that they brought in. They brought in 100%. That's 4.4 trillion. They needed 138% just to break even, just to not add any more to the deficit that's already $35 trillion. But they are adding $1 trillion in deficit spending to the budget every 100 days. Not every 100 years, every 100 days. So let's talk about the math behind this. If America needs to borrow money for UBI in 2024 or 2025, let's just say for this year, if America decided to put a universal basic income out for 2024, the economic benefits will cycle through the system and be done, digested, and shit out the other end by the end of 2025. All of the benefits of that universal basic income that you paid in 2024 will be out of the system. You'll no longer have a benefit from it within a year. However, the debt will not be extinguished. The debt remains. So that's the problem. The debt grows like a cancer. Prices rise to match the increase in the money supply. So unless the UBI is increased every single year, let's say that the UBI that they give you is $1,000 a month, right? Unless that UBI is increased every year, the impact is normalized almost immediately. Everything floats up to match it. If you give $1,000 and everything just gets a little bit more expensive and it gets normalized immediately. What you need is the following year, every month, you need to get $1,200. And then the year after that, you need to get $1,400 in order for these effects to be realized. Otherwise, it just all becomes, it just instantly within the year just gets absorbed, normalized, and nobody notices it anymore, except that prices are up and they never come down. So there's no additional benefit. There's no additional benefit by continuing to give people welfare. Let me ask you this. How would you classify the welfare system that is currently going on in the United States? The EBT cards, CHIP, welfare, food stamps, all that. We used to have food stamps. Now it's on the EBT card. How would you define that as a success? Would you say that the communities that need that and depend on that, would you say that they are thriving, or that they never accomplished much of anything except staying down on the reservation, having fun, staying poor, as the Bitcoin community would say, all right? It's been a disaster. The American welfare system is a disaster by any measurable observation. You cannot, it has been 40, 50 years of people taking a handout and doing nothing with it. I told you I would mention the results of this UBI study. Well, let's get into this because it's extremely important that you understand. We talked about the sort of the economics behind it, the accounting, the math, but what about the psychology? Because there's something that needs to be understood when it comes to UBI. This is not as simple as just giving people money and then saying, pay your all your bills with it. You are taking your rational, logical, reasonable, educated view on UBI, and you are projecting that onto the people that use UBI, and you're saying, oh, this is going to be great for them because they're going to take this money and they're going to pay. They're now going to have the ability to, let's say it's $1,000 a month. Like, God, at least they can now go to the grocery store, get some extra food, and maybe get their cell phone bill paid every month, and maybe it's enough to cover their health care. They've got health insurance. Maybe it's just enough to take the burden of health care, car payment, and cell phone payment off there. You would say, oh, wouldn't that be a benefit to the people that need it to be able to lift the burden so it's just some of their bills are covered? The answer would be, of course. Of course, I mean, everyone would, yeah. I mean, would things be easier if someone was taking care of those bills for you? Of course. Here's the problem. They don't take care of the bills with the money. That's not where it goes. They did a 3-year study. 5 researchers. They published a paper, and it was titled The Employment Effects of a Guaranteed Income, Experimental Evidence from 2 U.S. States. The 2 U.S. states were Texas and Illinois, and this group of 5 researchers went on and did this study over the course of 3 years. What they did is they had a control group and a test group. In the control group, there were 2,000 people, and those 2,000 people were given $50 a month extra. 2,000 people given $50 a month. That's the control group. That's the group that basically gets nothing. Essentially, $50 a month. I don't know what you're going to do with that. A month. Not a day, not a week, a month. Then there's the test group. It's half the size. It's only 1,000 people. But these 1,000 people got $1,000 a month. Now, huge difference. All of the participants, the criteria for this is that all of the participants were low income, which meant $29,000 a year or less they were making. Typically right around $29,000. So it works out to a little bit more than it's like $2,400 a month that people are expected to. That's what people are normally making. So if you're making $2,300 a month and someone gives you an extra $1,000 a month, that's a huge difference. If you're making $2,300 a month and someone gives you $50 extra a month, thank you, but it's not going to move the needle one way or another, right? So the 1% represented a 40% increase in the amount of revenue that those households were used to getting. They were now getting 40% more. So what are the results after 3 years? Well, here's what they found. The people that received a universal basic income worked less. I know you're all really surprised, right? But think about this. You might think, well, if I just kept working at the same rate that I was always been working, and I got $1,000 extra a month, boy, I could really start to get some traction. That's not what happened. When the people got $1,000 extra a month, you know what they did? They cut back on working. They worked less. None of them invested in their education. Nobody went out and got educated. Nobody said, oh, I'm going to take this opportunity to go to trade school and learn how to be a plumber. They didn't do that. Plumbers make nice money. Now, I want to be an electrician. You just want to be an electrician? Yeah, I want to be an electrician making 90 grand a year. Okay. Did they take this money or take the advantage of this opportunity? They had it for 3 years. Did you do anything? You have 1,000 days to improve your life. We're going to give you a bunch of money. Did you do anything? The answer is no. They didn't do anything. They did not invest their time. They did not invest their money. They did not invest in themselves. They didn't do anything. They did, what would you do with $1 million? I would do nothing. I would sit there and I would do nothing, right? It's office space. That's what they found. No new businesses were created. I mean, again, like, not that $1,000 a month is enough for you to like really start, becoming a huge entrepreneur. But again, let's just say it still changed your current situation. Somebody out of these 1,000 people had to go on and say, I'm going to start a, car washing business, or you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to mobile car washing, like whatever, something that doesn't require a ton of entry, in terms of capital to get in. They didn't do it. They didn't see any reason, need, desire, motivation. They didn't do it. Here's what happened. Here's the interesting thing that happened. The people that were given the $29,000 a year people who were given an extra $12,000, which puts them now at $41,000. They went from $29,000 to getting an extra 12 grand, right? So now they're at $41,000. $41,000 a year. You know what wound up happening when they took a look at their income? They didn't make $41,000 a year. They made $39,500. They made $1,500 less than they were supposed to each year. You know why? Because they worked less. They just didn't go to work. They kept their jobs, but they just didn't work as much. And they probably blew it on lottery tickets. I mean, seriously. And Mountain Dew and crystal meth and whatever. I mean, there are some situations in which there are people that are economically disadvantaged through no fault of their own. Born in a bad situation, never got above it. The game was rigged against them, right? And then there's other people that are also born in a situation like that, but they don't do anything to help themselves out. In fact, they do everything wrong. Their financial planning is, they don't have financial planning. They buy lottery tickets and they think that, well, if one day, maybe, if you're buying lottery tickets and that's your retirement plan, then I will quote the great Terence McKenna. If you don't have a plan, then you become part of somebody else's plan. And if your plan for financial security is buying lottery tickets, you don't have a plan. And that's what they found with this. It's the Peter Gibbons effect. I would do nothing. Is it Peter from Office Space? This is, I think what people need to understand before they have the conversation or the debate even about universal basic income is that they have to remember that there is a psychological component to this that really affects people, and that it's not as easy as just adding money as a variable. That variable changes other variables. It changes their behavior and how they act. And so you think you're going to, and now of course the governments know this. This isn't some sort of secret that I'm going to enlighten them about. They know this. Why do you think they give people welfare in the first place? Because they know it is crippling. That if there's one thing that they're sure of is that if they give you welfare, you will never succeed. And they don't want you to succeed. You know why they don't want you to succeed? Because government needs a bunch of people that are dependent on them in order for them to remain viable and necessary. The minute that people no longer need the government for a variety of things, including and especially handouts, the government ceases to be relevant. And so they can't do that. They need people dependent on them. And they know that if they give them money, obviously people are always going to come back for free money. But it's more than just giving them money. It's giving them money and it's stealing their motivation if they had any in the first place. It's psychologically traumatizing to people in a way that is almost backwards from what you would assume. You would think it would be a benefit. You would think that people would use this and it would accelerate their development or their growth or get them out of a bad situation or allow them to move or whatever. Nobody did any of it. Some people are content to do nothing. They just are, and you're never going to be able to motivate them. Universal basic income also has a poor return on investment. The money spent on UBI does not provide the return that is needed to justify something of this magnitude. It just doesn't. It's just the math doesn't work on it. Childcare, free healthcare, free education, debt service. These are socialist programs with a low return on investment. This is money that goes out the door from the government and never comes back. It doesn't come back in the form of increased productivity. It doesn't come back in the form, if you're just paying people for childcare and healthcare and education and debt service. That does nothing that provides almost nothing to the economy. Debt service provides nothing. Debt service is literally nothing. You're just giving bankers their money back. It does nothing to fuel the economy or spur growth or finance innovation or anything like that. It's just debt service. So we spend a lot of money on that. Childcare? I mean, maybe. I mean, I guess there's revenue staying in the childcare industry. But it doesn't give people the opportunity to then go out and start businesses. It's just a low return on investment. There is some return. It's just low. It's just not a good one. More debt equals less growth. Less growth equals less taxes collected, right? So this is how they should look at this, is that we have more debt. And because we have more debt, we can't grow because we're focused on servicing the debt. And when you can't grow, that means that fewer people are out there making more and more money and therefore more and more tax revenue for them. So this becomes a cascading effect where there's more debt, and that creates the opportunity where growth is just non-existent. And then with non-existent growth, you start to flatten out on your tax revenue collected, and then that eventually starts to weaken, and then you're collecting less money to pay for more stuff. It just unravels. They call this a negative multiplier effect. That's the term for it. This happens when government spending pushes out the private sector, screwing up everything even more. This is when the government gets involved in an industry, and their spending in that industry is so overwhelming that all of the private companies that used to be in that industry are sort of like out of business, or they're unable to compete. It screws up everything. Government gets involved and puts its thumb on the scale of the economics of that industry and throws everything out of whack when they come in with billions of dollars and start throwing it at problems. It just creates a situation where the private sector can't, you can't be competitive against when the government gets involved and starts asking for discounts in pricing or sorts of, restrictions that only they can lift and things like that. It creates an unlevel playing field. And so look, this is part of the reason why you don't need government help, air quotes on help, because it's never helpful. There's always an ulterior motive to it. And there is no scenario in which government spending pays for itself. The studies that find that economic benefit is much lower than promised. When the government when they tout this economic benefit from some idea that they have, it's always overestimated. Always. It never provides the economic benefit that they promise that it will. And if you go through economic textbooks, they'll talk about universal basic income. They're all wrong. They're just wrong. They're talking about economic theory. They're not talking about economic reality. But of course, what would you expect to find in the university system? I mean, you're not really going to find actual information. It's all theoretical. Those who can do, those who can't teach, as they say. So if you want to learn about economics, this was the finance teacher I had at USC came in and just immediately got everybody's attention on the first day of class. He walked down there and he said, introduced himself, said, I run multiple companies. I teach here because I love teaching because it's really fun, but I'm a multimillionaire. If you listen to me, I'll show you how to get rich. Everyone was like, what the fuck? Like, okay. He was a guy that was doing it, was currently doing it and had done it. And he got our attention and we started to listen to what he had to say about finance and why you should, how you need to come at this. And maybe this is the way you need to look at it. I'll listen to that guy. That guy has proven that he's done it. When the government comes out and says that they're going to put forth a universal basic income, and that we need to trust them, and that it's going to be filled with all these economic benefits. Forgive me for I'm going to need to see more proof than that. I don't trust them. There's a new universal basic income. We'll wrap up with this one, right? The illegal aliens seem to have their version of UBI. If you broke into the United States and found yourself in New York City, either because Governor Abbott put you on a bus or because the Biden administration flew you on a plane and landed in New York, well, this is what you would have as your reality. You would know that in New York City, they have allocated to spend $12 billion over the next 3 years on migrants. Illegal aliens, or whatever we want to call it. Illegal migrants? I don't know. We need to come up with a term for them. Human beings aren't illegal. Yeah, they are. Sure they are. Stop that. Of course they are. When you come across it, when you're from another country and you don't have any paperwork and you come into a new country, if I tried to do that and get into Sweden, that would be illegal. They would put me on a plane and send me back home, right? So when 10 million people do it, it's still illegal. Whatever. But if you're in New York City, 16,000 hotel rooms are currently being used for illegal aliens. 16,000. You could take you could put every single person that's at Madison Square Garden to watch the Knicks game, give them their own hotel room. That's 16,000 people. 16,000 hotel rooms? Has the United States government ever offered to put you up in a hotel room for free in New York City? Do you know how much it costs to stay in New York City? Even a shitty hotel room in New York City is $450 a night. Maybe if I went to Caracas, would they put me up at the Four Seasons? I mean, would the Venezuelan government if I broke into Venezuela, like those American mercenaries, those American, I think they were SEALs that got caught in the water and then got arrested and finally traded. If I was those guys and I broke into the country to do some sightseeing, would the Venezuelan government put me up in the Four Seasons? No, absolutely not. Because you can say what you want about them, but they're not delusional. The American government is out of their mind. They are trying to break the country. Universal basic income is going to be one component of this. $2 billion in New York City has been spent on services and supplies. $1.98 billion, let's just round up and say another $2 billion, has been spent on housing. They've already spent $2,000 million on housing. That is crazy to me. That's crazy to me. That's an almost unimaginable amount of money to just been spent already on hotel rooms just in New York City for people who don't live here, who aren't from this country, and aren't visitors, aren't tourists. They're not coming to New York City to go see a show on Broadway and spend money. They are an economic drain. $500 million spent for food and medical. $500 million for IT and administration, which means money that they're the administration's stealing, I'm sure. 193 migrant shelters. 80% of the illegals in New York are in hotels or motels, so they're not homeless. There's plenty of United States veterans that are homeless, but at least the illegal migrants aren't. So Western Europe, same thing. Prepaid debit cards. Remember that when we had Dan Lyman on from Borderhawk News and InfoWars, talking about what they found in Western Europe? Debit cards. Who is providing the debit cards to the migrants? They talked to the Croatian police about it. They said, Open Foundation. Oh, really? Well, and Open Foundation is reloading these cards? No, that's not Open Foundation reloading them. Open Foundation is giving them the initial card with the money on it. When it comes time for these cards to be reloaded with more money, that's being done by the EU. Not my opinion on it. That's what Borderhawk News found. So let's talk about the future of UBI, and then we'll wrap it up. Because Klaus and the boys have UBI playing an important role in the Great Reset. You've heard about it. You've probably seen him talking about it in his extremely scary accent. How is it going to look when it comes through them? Well, you could see universal basic income. The most logical way will be through a central bank digital currency. Now that could be a Fed coin. We don't know what the CBDC is going to look like necessarily. It could be a Fed coin. It could be something that's more individual bank specific, like a Chase coin or a Bank of America coin. That's sort of like the tokenization stable coins that sort of blur the line between this. We'll see how it all plays out. But in the end, it would look like a universal basic income that is coming through a central bank digital currency of some form or fashion, programmable. And the Chase coin or the B of A coin would be programmable as well. I don't want to misconstrue that the fact that it's just because it's a doesn't mean it isn't also a programmable coin. You can be both. And in fact, they will be both. So it will be both stable in the sense that it's pegged to the dollar, but also programmable so that it can be set to expire, set to be tracked. Of course, it'll be tracked, maybe set to only work on the company store, maybe set to use for only things like the EBT card is done. So you can't buy alcohol, you can't buy tobacco, you can't buy guns, you can't buy weed, you can't buy the things that are, the sin tax stuff. You can't buy any of that. You can only buy certain like produce, meat, food, all the things that you would need for sort of typical items. The way it gets coded in a grocery store's SKU where they've got everything set up, it just scans and it won't scan if you're not eligible to buy it. Think of that for UBI though. Think of that because they'll be able to track what you're using it for. They'll be able to look at it. Too much red meat this week. Declined, so you of course this will be a universal basic income. In Klaus Schwab's future would include vaccine compliance. Full vaccine compliance would be mandatory. It'd be full compliance with whatever they dreamed up. And of course vaccines would be part of it, but it certainly would not be limited to that. Somewhere down the line they need you to do something. You have to stand on one foot and hop, for 5 minutes and film yourself doing that in order to be eligible. You'll get the carrot, the UBI carrot for social credit compliance, and you'll get the UBI stick for non-compliance or wrong think, the things that you say on social media, the wrong podcasts that you listen to, my God. So that's all going to be contingent upon this, right? Listen, if you're giving out free money, you can set the parameters as to why it's free or what the criteria is. Well, I'm going to give you this money, but you can only use it at my buddy's record store. You can only buy, but you go to my, this grocery store. Or if you're the World Economic Forum, you can only use it at our partners' companies, Home Depot and, Apple and whoever, all the big ones, right? But Bob's lumber store down the street from you, you're not going to be able to take it. Right. So you will definitely screw up the economy by doing this. Again, this is what I talked about earlier. When government starts getting into these industries and giving a bunch of money, it throws off the entire economy. So if you're Bob's lumber store and everybody in the country is getting a universal basic income and they can use that free money at Home Depot because Home Depot is part of the World Economic Forum, but they can't use it at Bob's lumber store because they're not. His store's going out of business. In fact, every small lumber store is going out of business. You can't compete with that. So this is how universal basic income could come in and really fuck up the entire economy, besides like the obvious, right? And again, I am a compassionate person for people that are in dire situations that's no fault of their own. But when you're spending $12 billion on illegal aliens to come in here, I can't get on board with that. That's not a good return on investment. It does nothing except psychologically destroy the will of the people that are currently here and make them think, God, you must hate, you've never done anything like this for me. Jim never asked for a second cup of coffee at home. They never treat me this well. Here, they're giving every Tom, Dick, and Javier the red carpet treatment in New York City. Be so lucky, right? So, and of course, the universal basic income is also good for keeping the poors from revolting and chopping our heads off. which will definitely happen if these lunatics keep doing this, keep going the way that they're going in Western Europe and in the United States. At some point, the gallows will come out. People will build the gallows, and they know that. Right. So universal basic income is always part of the plan to just keep the elite from getting murdered. Right. It's an insurance policy and just keeping everybody like, we don't want everybody desperate. We want them, never able to excel in this society that we've built, but we don't want them too desperate, because if they're too desperate, then they have nothing to lose and they start getting revenge on us, the elite that are controlling all this. So they don't want that. So universal basic income also works as a bribe. Let's be honest. It works as a bribe. And if you're giving people free money, they have a vested interest in making sure that you stay in office or stay alive or keep this program. Or if you're a politician who says, I'm going to keep universal basic income, all those people go, I'll vote for them because they're going to give me free money. It's the easiest sales pitch in the book, right? But of course, all of this is to say that there is a final, maybe not the only one, but definitely one of the most diabolical components of universal basic income, and that is that it will eventually be an on-ramp to the digital ID. You will have to have a digital identification to claim your universal basic income, right? It's free money. And besides taking these vaccines that you don't want, we're going to make you do it. You're going to also, we need to know who you are and make sure that there isn't somebody else out there pretending to be you and collecting your free money, right? You want to get your free money. You don't want some guy down the street who's stolen your identity or some guy in another country to collect on yours. So you're going to need a digital ID with biometrics and eyeball scans and fingerprints and all that stuff. We're going to need it all. But you're going to get free money. I mean, what do you care? Right? You scan your face when you go through security at the airport, and you've given your fingerprints on this or that, and you don't care anymore. At this point, it's fine. Who cares, right? That's how they'll do it. Digital ID as the on-ramp to universal basic income. Well, here's the bottom line. The universal basic income is not coming from a place of goodness, right? It's not coming out of out of their overflowing hearts, that they're not looking out for the public and they just want everybody to be well during their time here on this planet. It's not that. It's purely for control and management of the human livestock. That's what it is. They're going to give you feed. They're going to put food in your trough, and you're going to keep coming back to that trough because every day there's food there and you need that. And you don't care how it gets there. It's just there, right? And for a lot of people, they just don't care. As long as it's there, they'll do whatever they have to do. Maybe it's take a vaccine. Maybe it's scan your eyeballs or scan your butthole or whatever it is they need you to do in the future. They'll do it. And then next year, you'll need to do something else. And then the following year, you'll need to do something else. And then the year after that, you'll need to do something else. And it'll never end. It will never end. This is the future. It's an idea that clearly was run through the folks that understand psychological management, the implications of this on human psyche, what this does to your desire, your drive, how you make these calculations in terms of what you're going to do with this money. They know all of this. It's control disguised as compassion. It's the most devious form because they want you to think that they're the good guys, but they're not. So UBI has been scientifically shown to cause laziness. People will only do the bare minimum when incentivized, and more than all of that, when the governments give out universal basic income and handouts to keep, to the general public, they know that what that does is it has the effect of keeping everybody poor. It's almost like that's the plan. Hey, if you like this episode, you can take this additional step right now. Share it with your friends and family, or rate the show, or do something. Macroaggressions.io. It's the place to go to find everything about the show. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you again soon.